Does your e-commerce store run on Shopify? Start turning clicks into customers, skyrocketing your sales, and unleashing your Shopify store's full potential. Learn from trusted Shopify experts, industry leaders, and entrepreneurs. Join us today. The Masters of the Shopiverse. We have the power.
Hey, welcome to Masters of the Shopiverse. It's great to have you on the show today. We have got an awesome guest today. It's Aaron Muderick from Crazy Aaron's. I suppose with a name like that, we should just let you run with the story because there's got to be a fun story behind that name.
I feel like I could tell you any story and you would think it was real.
Well, make up a good one. They say make up a good fish story, right? So
we happen to be celebrating the 25th anniversary of Crazy Aaron's this year. So the story I'll tell you is true. And it is, I was a dorky, geeky kid doing a lot of computer work. I majored in computer science. I worked out in Silicon Valley. And then I came back to Philadelphia doing other computer jobs, but to be near my family. And I was very fidgety at my desk, and I had all kinds of different toys. And one of those toys was an old egg of the Putty that we played with as children. And I thought to myself, gosh, this is awesome stuff. I am playing with it constantly, working out my fidgets before fidgets were fidgets. That's, that's what was happening. And in addition to that, I thought, this could be more beautiful. This could, it was sort of stuck in 1965. And a lot had happened in technology and chemistry. And even though I had never taken a chemistry class or been in a chem lab, I just kind of knew it was possible. And I went down that rabbit hole and started to find that my coworkers were stealing my Putty, buying Putty from me that I would make at home. And they dubbed me Crazy Aaron.
Nice. That's awesome. What a cool
I think they thought I should be doing more software work and maybe a little less toy making. And I think part of the crazy, to be honest, was this guy's going to lose his job.
They're like, what are you doing out there? Yeah. So you say you taught yourself chemistry then? Or how did that all work?
I did. I was always interested in those things, but being sort of very computer focused, there just wasn't room in my academic schedule. And so but I was so young in my early 20s, and I had friends in college and grad school. And so I said, hey, you have any leftover textbooks? Right? So I got a general chemistry book, I got an orgo book, and I started just flipping through the pages and night by night figuring things out, learning the language enough that I could go to the US patent database, look up these old patents on how Putty was made in the end of World War II and in the 50s and 60s when they were exploring the new world of silicone rubber, and was able to understand enough of what they were doing that I started experimenting myself.
Oh, that's incredible. So how did you turn that into a business then? What was the story from you created this stuff and then how'd you get from there to where you started your own business with it?
Yeah, so I was making Putty to entertain myself, to the approval of my coworkers, and it very quickly turned to my coworkers offering me money to buy their own Putty. But the piece I was missing was that I was selling it for the same thing it cost to make it. And it took me a little while, being young and idealistic, to realize that I needed to up the price a little to cover my risk and to cover my time. And I started doing that, and they still came in and bought it, even though there were some grumblings that it was, X dollars one day and it was twice that the next day. We got through that transition as a group of friends. And then the Putty just started to spread virally amongst friends and relatives and friends of friends, to the point where I was driving to office parks and opening my trunk, and I had a box of Putty I had mixed by hand at my kitchen table and was selling it to them by the pound in plastic baggies, and maybe some people wanted a half pound of red and a quarter pound of orange, and hit me up next week and I'll see if I'm still in the market for more. And simultaneously to that, I was building websites. As part of the early internet, late 90s, early 2000s, and companies were putting up their websites for the first time, one of which was a website selling vitamins. And one day after the site had launched, I was asked to go and log into the back end of what we had built, because this was before tools like Shopify. Everything was a custom build, and to fix some kind of bug. And I saw what he was selling, and it was a very large number of zeros after the every day he was selling. And I thought to myself, gosh, I build websites for people all day. I could build myself a website.
Yeah.
So I did. And obviously that website is long since retired. And then many years later, we came to become a Shopify store for our online business.
That's awesome. So you just started with building your website, but what did you do to market that website? Did you get it out there? I mean, you were in the early days, so that was nice. You know, the timing was great, but what did you do to go ahead and take that from, okay, I've got a website now, how do I get the eyeballs on that website?
Well, at the beginning, very little. One of the things was the internet was a lot smaller then. It was so much smaller. It was in the era when people would send out an email with a list of new websites for the week. And people who were really into the internet would go and click and see the new 20 websites, because there were probably only 20 that week.
Wow.
And so just sort of being there was, it got you eyeballs. It was a much less competitive world. There was a listserv of grown-ups who liked Putty. And of course, I told them, hey, I just launched my website. Come check it out. And other than friends and relatives and neighbors, that was pretty much it for the first couple years, was just being there. And so if you were interested in Putty or stress relief, sort of natural SEO would take you to us with very little competition.
That's incredible. I mean, what an amazing thing to be in right then when that was happening, to be able to have your site up and have people discover you that way. That's so cool. I mean, true organic growth, right? Everything is just happening organically at that stage. It's really cool. So your site has seen a lot of changes, I'm guessing. And what ended up eventually leading you to Shopify?
Well, it got to a point, where I left computers and software to focus on Putty full time. And I guess I took with me a bit of burnout from doing all of that work for my clients. And so when it came time for our online store, as I had hobbled it together, to fade away and for it to become something new, I was looking for something that was more of a turnkey solution. I wasn't looking to be that guy who could customize everything, who could write my own code to make it do X, Y, and Z. I was focusing on growing our Putty business. I had employees, I had obligations. It wasn't going to be a pet project, maybe like it had been almost a hobby, all those years ago. And amongst the different competitors, Shopify, it came to the top because Shopify, to me, seemed to have a real focus on the user experience, on design, and being very frictionless. It wasn't a solution provided by like a merchant gateway because they had to offer their customers something. There seemed to be someone at the core of it, behind the scenes, who was like, we can change the customer experience to make shopping online fun, less tedious, so that was the one we chose.
That's awesome. And then I was just curious, sorry, I keep just firing these questions at you because it's such a cool story to be where you were and how you got to where you are now. What kind of marketing things did you end up developing over time as the internet got more and more competitive?
Sure. Well, the first thing was sort of Google SEO. You're talking early 2000s. When Google is beginning to dominate. And being that we were part of the early internet, we had a very good page rank, when page rank was sort of everything, because we were sort of around for a long time. You just got that. That was luck, right?
Right.
But just working SEO in terms of keywords and landing pages, and then working Google AdWords, and trying to drive traffic to us. First round of words are like sort of our own names, right, that a competitor might be buying. Second round would be things people do with the product. Third round would be problems we can solve, and trying to tweak and adjust and modify ad budgets to be relevant in those areas. And then it was an era also of advertising directly on a website. Find a website, say, hey, I think that your audience really connects with our customer base, how do we have, here's some display ads that you'll run for a 3-month period and we'll pay you some money. Ad networks were only just sort of beginning to form at that time.
Right. I remember those days. That was interesting. Yeah. Brandon and I have been in this world almost as long as you have. I started out into this back in 2003, or 2002, somewhere around there. And so, but yeah, so you've seen a lot of changes over time, and up to social media now and all the other things that are coming along with AI. Where do you think you want to take things next with your company?
Well, we have, in the past year or two, we have really leaned into social media as a way to connect with parents, to connect with children, and show them the joy of using our product, the new products that we're creating, all of the sort of possibilities that are available with in the world of Crazy Errands, whether it's our Thinking Putty or our Sensory Putty or our Land of Dough. Each of them are very sensory and tactile, and the sort of normalcy of video now as the primary means for people to receive. We went through the text era, we went through the static display era, the animated GIF era. Now you can just show people video and they don't need to wait while it's downloading because the network infrastructure is there. And that really helps us communicate the beauty and tactile nature of our product much better.
Incredible.
Looking forward, I think social media is going to continue to take on a very prominent role. I don't think it's going to flatten out, but I do think, as you see this with many of the different platforms, they vie to stay relevant, and they vie to balance sort of giving people the content they want versus generating the ad dollars they need to be viable as a business. And we're sort of just a fish in that sea, like many other businesses. We're happy to create content, we're happy to pay to advertise content, but what we need is engagement.
Mm-hmm.
And so being from, the software tech background, what recommendations would you have for others that are trying to follow this same path of, maybe starting their own business and maybe looking at Shopify from a tech standpoint? What advice would you have for them?
I like to focus on technical development. Minimum viable product is something you should have written on your wall and you should be looking at every day. And also, we have a rule here at Crazy Errands, which is if we have a process, an internal process that's developed for a variety of reasons, that's going to require a custom solution, that is a custom template, custom code, then we need to think about changing our process. Because custom, it leads you down a path which makes it more and more difficult for you to maintain it over time. The more you can swim with the pack, now of course you want your brand to be individuated and you want it to stand out, and this is your labor of love, you want it to be something. But there are creative ways to do that where you're at least minimizing the customization, or like you're suspicious of customization. And I think Shopify offers a tremendous number of sort of stock templates that you can use so that your business can look unique. You don't need to spend money you don't need to spend, and also you can get it up and running, because the sooner you start in front of customers, the sooner you appear to all the search engines and social media and to your customers, the more sales you're going to get. So how quickly can you get there with minimum viable product, and how can you keep it as simple as possible?
That's such an interesting perspective, because we do have, we work with clients who, maybe they haven't made the switch over to Shopify or to some other thing similar to it. And they have customized so many things on their old site that they can't get away from it. It's
right.
It's so integral to their business that it's getting farther and farther behind and harder to maintain because of that, and it's a really interesting perspective. I like that a lot.
It's a perspective that I learned being an engineer, because of course, as an engineer, you love to write code and you love to customize it to make it yours. But as I matured as a person and started seeing more of a project management life cycle, not just write the code and walk away, I could see how I was digging my own hole. And making a distraction for me running and growing my business, because time was spent sort of trying to dig out of that customized hole rather than reaching more customers or spending more time on marketing or in developing new innovative products. Those are things that would really add value to my business. Not, sure, there might be a difference in abandonment rate by a very small percentage to have my special custom feature versus not, but I could compensate that tenfold by just having a product that's more innovative, or spending more time sort of finding the right group of people to see the product. Those things have more value.
Right, or not waiting, a much longer time for something customized to be built by your developers if you're not the developer, right? Or and paying that extra money to do that, and when are you going to get that cost back? And it's really interesting. I like that a lot.
Small business is all about cash flow. So the sooner you have money coming in, the sooner you can start figuring out how to grow your business. But if you're just sort of in a holding pattern waiting for perfection, don't let perfection be the enemy of the good. We used to call it, don't create gold-plated solutions. Your customer needs a solution. It doesn't need to be plated in gold.
That's really interesting. Now tell us a little bit more about minimal viable product and what your ideas around that are.
Sure. I've sat in many meetings where with my team, who are smart and know what we're doing as a business, we need a filter and it can do all these different slicing and dicing of the product for Shopify. And I get it, but if it's going to have to be a big custom job, then make that version 2, and maybe version never, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just because it makes sense in a room, which is a bit of an echo chamber, doesn't mean that it's going to make sense to consumers. I find, based on my work and user experience, what makes sense to consumers is if our site is exactly like the last one they were on, and they know how to use it.
That's so true. It's really funny, even from a marketing standpoint. They're going into all of these different ad platforms like Facebook or Google or whatever. They are always changing that, and it gets pretty ridiculous, all of the changes they're making, and it's making it better. But sometimes it just seems like you're having to relearn everything constantly. And from a product standpoint, my goodness, when you're just trying to buy something and you want to do it, you want it as simple and as straightforward and as familiar as possible. I really like that.
So you talked about in the beginning, to get started, you had these different partnerships with maybe different websites to do display ads, or how have these kind of partnerships or networking with either like-minded businesses or other people that were serving your same target market, how has that changed over the years?
Well, in some ways it has diminished because it's no longer the only way to get your product advertising in front of customers, because there are ad networks and you can slice and dice by demographics to reach the people that you want. But there are still partners that we have where they just are such a match for what we do, whether it's a retailer or whether it's a certain kind of content that they may be creating, that we continue those partnerships.
Now, are you doing partnerships offline too? Just a lot of different things that aren't necessarily in the digital world, but just kind of getting out there to get your name in different mediums.
Well, so in addition to our web store, we have a pretty significant retail store presence. So we work with large and small retailers worldwide, and many of them have their own marketing efforts, and we do participate in online and offline marketing with all of them, whether that's a circular that comes to your house that happens to have our product, whether it's a catalog, whether it's Instagram or Facebook ads that they may be pushing, their own ads on their own networks, search engine optimization, or purchasing keywords on their own search results, in terms of a very large retailer might have millions and millions of products. How can we come up in their searches more, so it's less about sort of search engines and more store searches? We do all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Let's talk about SEO then. Tell us, how did you get started? I mean, it sounds like you're doing SEO right from the first, but over time, you've seen how that's changed. And what are you doing now that's working for you well on the SEO front?
In some ways, our natural SEO is the most important. We are a good, we sort of have a nice space carved out for our brand. So it's not like there are two companies who sell, each sell 50% of the razors in the United States, and they are just duking it out for 0.1% of market share. So we want to be careful that we have as much natural SEO as possible, and we aren't paying for keywords that are competing against ourselves or our own organic sales. And that's something for us as a company that we are looking at all the time, and trying to find that balance of spend to bring in new versus, well, we would have gotten that customer anyway, because they were searching directly for our product, or that our brand name is the de facto for that kind of product, and they would have found us.
Such an important thing. Brandon, maybe you could talk about how we've done that with our clients in the past, where we start out finding their buyer keywords, but over time we go organic for those keywords and eliminate that cost, right?
Right. Like ultimately you're trying to get the best return on investment for every penny that you're spending, right? And organic SEO traffic converts higher and creates more sales than any other type of traffic because of the buyer intent behind it. They're actively searching for, a solution that fits their problem. And then they find, whoa, this putty's awesome. I got to buy it. And they buy. Also with kind of the SEO realm of things, for your business, for example, you've gone from a website based business to now you've grown and you have dealers and distributors and retail chains. So you've really grown into several different areas where on the marketing side you have to be careful you're not competing against yourself, right? Or your dealers, because you're like, I would have got the sale anyways. So
if I compete with myself, I can look at the numbers at the end of the month and say, gosh, I wasted some of my own money. But if I'm competing against my dealers, now I've got a problem. Now I've got a phone call. Like,
Yeah.
You're wasting my money, right? And I don't want to do that, because I want good relationships with all the people where, the idea is to make product that helps everybody make money and ultimately makes the customer happy, so they come back and they want to buy it again. So it's a little delicate, but I've seen at times in an organization where we've gotten very gun shy about trying things because of the fear of crossing a line. And I think the most important thing is just to have an honest relationship, which is we are always going to be trying things and doing experiments and seeing what works, because the landscape is constantly changing. We can't do nothing. But if you have a problem, give me a call, right? And we can figure it out. The other beauty of digital media is it's not a 12-month purchase for television or print media where we can't rein it back, right? With digital, you can press a button and you can change it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think having that transparency up front with your partners and the people you're working with, just saying, hey, we're always going to be working, we're always going to push the envelope, but we're not trying to step on your toes at all. And so let's just have that ebb and flow, and we'll respect that from you as well. And we can always talk about it and work through things if something comes up, and I think that's great. I was also going to ask you, you mentioned, as I was kind of getting to know your organization, there's a lot of Aarons that work at your company, aren't there?
There are.
Tell us the story behind that. How did that end up happening?
There's no story, really. I mean, it's a funny joke that if your name is Aaron, you get an extra 10 points on your civil service exam to come work here. But I think it's just one of those things. I don't know if it's a subconscious thing on the part of the applicant, or if it's a subconscious factor on the hiring side. But we have many Aarons that work here, and they are all excellent, and it makes meetings confusing sometimes. And not just to have a meeting where maybe 3 guys are named Bob, right? But they're all named Aaron, which is the name of the head of the company, which is not the most common name out there.
Right.
And many are spelled differently. We have a number of interesting spellings of the name Aaron, which is just fun. And there is one meeting that happens with an external consultant where there are 4 of us on the call with the consultant, and all of us are named Aaron. And they're all spelled differently.
So it really is crazy Aarons.
It really, we only meet these guys by Zoom, but I can only imagine what they are thinking or telling their friends over drinks about how nuts we must be.
That's so funny. So if someone wanted to go buy your putty, wanted to know more about your company, tell us where should they go? Where should they follow you?
Well, we're talking about Shopify and online selling,
Yeah.
so you should go to crazyarons.com, but it is available in most major retailers in the toy section.
Oh, that's awesome. And then also social media. Where are you found? It's just Crazy Errands on different your favorite social media platform as well.
Yeah, if you search for Crazy Aaron, you search for Thinking Putty, which is our sort of our original product. You'll find our social accounts on a variety of different media. I am on TikTok as The Real Crazy Aaron, and I do sort of my own posting, a little behind the scenes, versus our Crazy Aaron official account, where we sort of talk more about product and stuff that maybe is more playful for the kids.
That's awesome. So one other thing I wanted to ask you about is it looks like that you also had a big desire to give back to the community as you've built this company up. Tell me what you've done there with vocational centers and other things that you've worked with.
Sure. I mean, I grew up as a community-oriented family. I myself am very community-oriented. I see all of the different capabilities and specialties, in our society, and I see that they're all necessary to make it work. And when we got to a point where we couldn't make the putty in the basement anymore, and we had hired all the neighborhood high school kids, and we're running sort of multiple shifts out of the basement, and it needed to go further, I remembered in high school I had worked at a factory that made dog tags for pets. And they had a number of workers who were intellectually handicapped or intellectually disabled. And it occurred to me how happy they were to work, how important it is to find work that is at your level of ability or just a little bit above, so that, and we've all had this at some point in our work lives where you're in a flow state, right? You are challenged at exactly the right level, and it starts to get fun, and time just flies by. And I have seen that, that many of the tasks we have, which may seem repetitive or sort of difficult to kind of do for a long period of time, are for individuals with different intellectual disabilities, sort of at their level of performance capability, and that they really enjoy that work. And we also have a lot of different kinds of work, so we have the opportunity to swap people around, to find different things and find ways for individuals with different challenges to complement each other in the same way that as a society we all complement each other, and work in pods of 5 and 6 to complete the job all together. So you find one person who honestly may not even have the ability to read and write, but is extremely sort of detail oriented, and will know if the label is on upside down or if it's crooked, or have another person maybe with a physical disability with only use of one arm, and finding tasks for them in terms of weighing and portioning, or loading the containers, and everyone sort of helps each other to create these little work units, and then we find some efficiencies to make it work.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so cool. How long have you been doing that?
So we started doing that in 2003. Yeah, so it's been 20 years when we sort of tipped over from we can't do this alone anymore to where we are now.
That's amazing how many lives you may have impacted by doing something like that. Not only the individuals who are involved in the work, but also their families and just kind of their overall feeling of self-worth and the things that they're able to contribute, and I think that's a fantastic idea.
The happiest moments I get are when an individual who's helped to do this work goes to the mall, they see the product on the shelf. They get very, this is mine, just as you or we're all human. Like, I had a piece in this. And it's just fun that we are vertically integrated in a way where the work that happens here in Philadelphia is sort of on a store shelf here also in Philadelphia. And we can all share in sort of closing that loop. And it just so happens that our product is very much enjoyed by individuals with a wide range of intellectual and physical challenges, because it is therapeutic, and I'm playing with it the whole time we're talking here, and so it sort of closes a nice loop. I think a lot of young children who maybe aren't sure where they're going to end up. I get letters, wishing to come work in the Putty factory, and maybe some of them do. Who knows?
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, what a great way to solve a customer's problem, build this amazing business, and then at the same time you're giving back to those that are helping you along the way and improving everyone's lives. Like, it's kind of a Cinderella story.
I feel very lucky. I mean, I had a lot of crazy ideas. I did not go into making blimp drones. That was one that I was working on, right? I did go into making hot sauce packets that could fit on a keychain, because you never know if the restaurant isn't going to have hot sauce. I went into Putty. Putty was the one that sort of had the most legs to get out of software. But I'm very lucky and grateful for our customers that they like it. I'm grateful that we've been able to stay relevant for all these 25 years. And I'm proud of all the lives we've been able to touch, I hope, very positively in building vocational skills and work skills and just daily work providing meaning for life, which is very important to me personally.
That's fantastic. And one last thing I just want to kind of touch on is you yourself and your ability to, and this is a strain I see with really successful entrepreneurs. They're willing to learn new things. They're willing to research. They're willing to try. And, pouring over chemistry manuals and different things, all of these different things that you did to try to come up with this idea really shows that amazing tenacity that it takes. And if you're willing to do that extra thing, it wasn't like you weren't a busy person during that time. But you did this because you had a passion for it and you were looking for it. And once you do that, you find the solution that no one else has found, and you come up with something that impacts countless lives that way. So what a great story. We really appreciate you having on the show.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here. It was nice chatting with you, gentlemen, and I wish you the best.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. Ben and Brandon are the owners of Ignite Viral Media. They have helped small businesses to Fortune 500 companies skyrocket their Shopify sales for 14 years. If you need help with digital marketing for your Shopify store, go to igniteviralmedia.com and book a call with the Masters of the Shopiverse. We have the power